Ever since its debut in 1977, the Star Wars franchise has been a staple of pop culture. So many of its characters and aspects have become so well known around the world that even those who haven't seen the films are aware of Han Solo and the Force. But did you know there are some details even the biggest fans might not know about their favorite films? Here are Screen Rant's 10 hidden Star Wars facts you didn't know.
I have a bad feeling about this.
Spielberg can't direct. When planning Return of the Jedi, Lucas's first choice for director was his good friend Steven Spielberg, who was coming off the hits Raiders of the Lost Ark and E.T. But Spielberg couldn't accept the job, since Lucas had dropped out of the Directors Guild following controversy over Star Wars' infamous opening text scrawl. With few options available, Lucas had to go with the non-union choice of Richard Marquand. Thankfully, Marquand worked out, and Return of the Jedi offered an awesome finale to the trilogy. Still, it's hard not to think what might have been if Spielberg in his prime had directed a Star Wars flick. Liam Neeson's poor judgment. The Phantom Menace is seen as one of the most disappointing films ever.
Misa called Jar Jar Binks. Misa, your humble servant.
But even its detractors still enjoyed Liam Neeson's performance as the Jedi Master Qui-Gon Jinn. However, if it weren't for a lapse in judgment, we may have missed that memorable aspect. When offered the part, Neeson accepted it, without reading a word of George Lucas's malign script. Being in a Star Wars movie is something many would sign up for, but Neeson might have thought differently if he'd seen the story Lucas had in mind. A story which infamously sent the series down a dark path that it still hasn't fully recovered from.
Do or do not. There is no try.
Yoda speaks the truth. Even James Earl Jones couldn't believe that Darth Vader was Luke's father. The twist sent shockwaves around the world. It was such a surprise that Lucas had to include a scene in Return of the Jedi where Yoda informed Luke he really was Vader's son. That's because a child psychologist told Lucas that kids watching the film would dismiss Vader's revelation as a lie unless it was unequivocally stated as fact. Since Yoda was one of the franchise's heroes and perceived as an honest being, it was determined that this was the best way to go. There clearly was no misdirection happening here. Ford Takes Two. After the original Star Wars became a hit, stars Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher quickly signed on for 2 sequels. But Harrison Ford did not. Thinking that Han Solo's story had been told in full, the actor was unwilling to commit to multiple films. That was one of the influencing factors in setting up the famous Carbonite sequence in The Empire Strikes Back, since everyone was unsure if Ford would come back for the 3rd film. Luckily, Lucas convinced him to return, and Han had a heroic conclusion to his arc and still has a part to play in the future. Lando's a clone? Fans would have to wait until 2002 to get a taste of the Clone Wars teased in the original film, and Lucas's idea for that conflict clearly evolved over time. The initial concept for Han's buddy Lando was that Lando was a clone that fought in the war, leading a legion of them to a settlement when the fighting was over. Admittedly, that would have been an interesting angle to explore, but having Lando be a one-of-a-kind, smooth-talking scoundrel was for the best and set up a stronger character arc. It's hard to go wrong with Billy Dee Williams. Luke becomes Vader. Despite the Emperor's best attempts, Luke never turns to the dark side of the Force and remains a hero until the very end. But Lucas toyed with the idea of having the hero become bad. In the early stages, Return of the Jedi was going to end with Luke putting on Vader's helmet and saying, "Now I am Vader." It would have been a moment out of left field and completely ruined the entire story of the trilogy. Thankfully, this was never a change Lucas made to the originals. Seeing Luke have one touching moment with his father was much more emotional and satisfying for viewers. Star Wars, flop of the century. After completing a rough cut of the first film, Lucas showed it to a few of his director friends, and many of them were unimpressed with the results. Playing into Lucas's worst fears about the project, the likes of Brian De Palma and others called it the worst movie ever made and did not express much hope for it. The only one who proved to be prophetic was Steven Spielberg, who believed from the beginning that Star Wars had what it took to be a major success. He may have been just trying to make his friend feel better, but Spielberg seemed to know what he was talking about. A disturbance in the Force. George Lucas created Star Wars, but producer Gary Kurtz was just as instrumental. When he left the franchise before Return of the Jedi, it upset many of the cast and crew and sent the series down a different path. Lucas and Kurtz disagreed over why people loved Star Wars. Lucas thought it was the spectacle and put more of an onus on special effects and commercialization. Kurtz fought for poignant stories that resonated. As we could later see in the response to the prequel trilogy, many of the Star Wars fans would have sided with Kurtz. It's too bad he didn't stay on. The first film is 4th. When Star Wars was first released, it was just Star Wars. Its sequel started the trend of subtitled episodes, and The Empire Strikes Back was called Episode 5. To make things more consistent, Lucas re-released the original movie with the addition Episode 4, A New Hope. However, he did not have the prequel trilogy planned at the time, and Fox executives tried to discourage his new title to avoid confusing moviegoers familiar with the Roman numeral. He eventually went back and completed the story, but for a while there it had to seem odd to many that the first, second, and third films were really the 4th, 5th, and 6th. What's My Name? Boba Fett, Palpatine, Ewoks. These names are iconic as part of Star Wars lore. But how did they get that way? Unlike Luke, Han, and Vader, the names are hardly spoken in the original trilogy, if at all. Boba Fett is referred to as the bounty hunter throughout Empire Strikes Back, until Han utters his name before he falls into the Sarlacc pit, and nobody says Palpatine or Ewok in Return of the Jedi. It's a testament to Star Wars merchandise that these figures are known by their full names, and not just what's said in the films. It's hard to imagine them standing out if they were known only by generic terms and not something unique to them. Those are our picks for hidden facts about Star Wars. Were there any we missed? If you know more unknown facts about Star Wars, feel free to comment below, and remember to subscribe to our channel for more videos like this one.
Luke, the Force will be with you.